Mid-April, I went to, back in Florida, I went to Jacksonville, Orlando, the Villages, the Tampa Bay region, Southwest Florida, and of course back to South Florida where I live. Everywhere I went, as I interacted with small businesses, we did a lot of focus on recipients of PPP and how the program had helped them. Everywhere I went, I heard the same thing from people that didn't know each other. There's no way that they coordinated on this message. And it's went something like this. We have 50 job openings. We can only get 5 people to even respond. Only 1 will come in for an interview, and then they didn't take the job when I offered it. Over and over and over again, hearing that from small businesses in various sectors, so not just restaurants and hotels and hospitality, but various other sectors as well, including one manufacturer. And when I asked, well, why is it? Why are people telling you that they're not going to do it? And the answer that people gave them was, look, I'm receiving unemployment benefits. It pays maybe not as much as I was making working, but pretty close. When those run out, I'm going to go back to work. That's what we're being told by small businesses. It's not what I'm saying. I'm not having a press conference here with you today to tell you that's what I believe. It's what I'm being told. So I'm here to tell you what small businesses are telling me, and I believe are telling everyone that's here. And that is that enhanced unemployment benefits are creating an incentive for people not to return to work until they expire. It's not because people are lazy. Right? Accusing anyone of being lazy. It's because people are logical. Because it's logic that if you're going to make close to what, or as much, or in some cases more than what you do when you're at work, you'll go back to work when that expires. We have a labor crisis in this country. I have a small business owner, owns a handful of restaurants in Miami, who has put up a sign on the door that says, due to the labor crisis, wait times for an hour or something along those lines, they just can't. A guy calls every day. We're having a labor crisis. Just like small business in particular got hit hard during the pandemic when they were shut down, they're now being hit hard again by a labor crisis that's not allowing them to open up to the levels that are allowed by local authorities. I heard the arguments that some make, and a lot of people contort themselves into a pretzel to try to come up with some explanation that has nothing to do with the benefits. People are afraid of getting COVID, people have nowhere to put their kids. I can't speak to the rest of the country. I can tell you in Florida, schools have been open since October. And you can literally walk into various retail establishments throughout the state and get a vaccine without an appointment. We now have probably more vaccines than willing recipients. So I think it's important for us to acknowledge that we have a labor crisis, that a government program has exacerbated it, and it's time to address it because we are doing significant harm to the ability of these small businesses to survive, to the point where some of them, by the time people are ready to go back to work in these cases, some of these small businesses won't be there to take them because they won't make it there, given what they've already lost. Brevemente le diré que hace unas semanas estuve en varias ciudades del estado de la Florida y en negocio tras negocio es el mismo mensaje. Ellos tienen trabajos disponibles y no pueden conseguir a nadie que venga a trabajar. Y las personas se lo están diciendo claramente, mientras que los beneficios estén recibiendo los beneficios, que en muchos casos paga más de su trabajo, no van a regresar. Yo no digo que las personas son vagas, yo creo que las personas son lógicas, que están usando la lógica. Eso no es lo que yo estoy diciendo, yo no estoy inventando esto me lo están diciendo a mí, los pequeños comerciantes que ya han sufrido tanto durante la pandemia y están sufriendo ahora de nuevo con esta crisis laboral. Y es importante que el gobierno nos siga contribuyendo a esta emergencia. Dr. Marsha, I think you were next.
Okay, Will. Good afternoon, everybody. Appreciate you coming out and covering this story. We have 8.1 million open jobs across this country right now. 8.1 million, that's 500,000 more jobs than we've ever had open before, a record going back to 2018. Sat down, done over 20 town halls, visited with hundreds, maybe thousands of business owners. Their number one concern, the number one challenge for the economy now is getting people to come back to work. In the state of Kansas, they have a maximum of a $500 per week state benefit, and then we're adding the $300 from the federal government, $800 a week. That comes out to about a $40,000 a year job. And then if you have a spouse, maybe they're getting another $40,000 a year as well. That's $20 an hour in case you haven't done the math yet. And just frankly, there's a lot of jobs that weren't paying as much of that. I've talked to multiple owners. They've raised the wages 10%, 20%, and even paying child care workers to come back so we have child care so people can go back to work. They're just being paid more to stay at home. I also wanted to share, though, that I have some empathy and concern about some of the other challenges for America. It's not just about decreasing the unemployment insurance. There's also other issues that we can face as well. And one of them is just making sure all of our kids are back in school. I used to sign a paycheck for 300 nurses. And if one of those kids was sick and they had to go home, it was a huge problem for the rest of the hospital. So I understand that we need kids back in school, and we need definitive leadership from the White House and the CDC. They're very ambiguous. They need to be very clear that it's safe for kids to go back to school. The next thing I hear about is child care. Once upon a time, we were living 1,500 miles from our nearest relative. I was an obstetrics resident working 100 hours a week. My wife was a neonatal intensive care nurse working 12-hour shifts. We had a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old. I think even after 37 years of marriage, my wife and I would say child care was still the toughest challenge that we've ever had. Solving child care at the federal level, very, very difficult. I know that some of the folks up here have tried to help with that. We doubled the tax credit for child care back in the 2017 Republican-led tax cuts bill as well. The other thing we've tried to focus on the ag committees is making sure there's extra nutritious opportunities for preschool kids, breakfast for children at school, backpacks to go home with the weekend. So there's things we can do at the federal level, but I'm proud of those people back home trying to solve this problem on their own. One great example, Salina, Kansas, the YMCA hooking up with local business owners. Other folks forming co-ops for their child care. So that's a hard nut to crack from the federal level, but I certainly have empathy towards that challenge. Next question I hear about people concerned is they don't have the training for the jobs that are out there. Listen, move to Kansas. We got the best community colleges, technical colleges in the world. In 2 years, we'll have you a job making $50,000 or $60,000 a year. The cost of living is inexpensive, and we'll get you a part-time job as well. What else is going on? I think this is the last one I want to talk about, why people aren't going back to work. They're living in fear. They're anxious. The biggest mental health crisis I've ever seen in some 30 years as a physician is going on right now. And part of the challenge right now is the message from the national meeting is a message of fear and doom. We need White House leadership. We need CDC leadership to step forward and to truly lead. It's time to take the mask off. We need our president, we need Dr. Fauci to take their mask off. If you've had the vaccine, it's 95% effective. 99% of the people will never be even hospitalized if they're exposed to the virus. So the vaccines work, but people don't have confidence because they're seeing the leadership live in fear and the national media playing that fear card. So we need leadership as well. Our bill that we've introduced will help solve part of the problem. It's going to pay people more to go to work than to stay home. These other issues need to be addressed as well. That's what's challenging our economy right now. Thanks for being here.
About a week and a half ago, my wife and I were driving through a town in Montana, and we saw balloons surrounding a small business. And I thought, well, this must be some kind of big promotion going on. It reminded me what you sometimes see in car lots to get the attention of people driving by. So we turned in. It turns out it was all about hiring. We were trying to get people to come to the small business because they needed to hire more people. It's the number one issue I'm hearing from my small businesses across Montana. We can't get enough people to fill the jobs. It is truly a labor crisis, not a job crisis. And anytime you're paying people more to stay home than to go back to work, it's going to create this perverse incentive. And as Marco said, this is not about laziness, it's about logic. You do the math, there's no reason to come back to work. I'm very proud of our governor in Montana, Governor Greg Gianforte. 9 days ago, he boldly stepped out and said we're going to end the federal unemployment benefit of $300 a week. He also said we're going to pay a $1,200 bonus if you come back to work. I'm pleased to report 9 other states, now 13, we just found out this morning, have joined Montana in stopping this $300 a week additional supplement that's causing people to stay home. We firmly believe that people are better off to now get a paycheck versus a government check. And we just heard a report this morning from a motel in my state of Montana who said prior to Governor Gianforte's action in Montana, they were getting 1 applicant a week. In the last 72 hours, they've received 60. It's starting to work.
Kudos to Operation Warp Speed. Because of Operation Warp Speed, we now have vaccinations. I saw an ad on the television the other day, doesn't matter what age, you can get a vaccination. Thanks to those schools that are opening back up. Iowa actually had their children in school since August. So my nephews have the benefit of going to school and being educated. We see coronavirus cases decreasing. We see hospitalizations going down. People need to go back to work. So we hear from Iowans every single day, Chuck Grassley and I, when we're out on that 99 county tour, doing those business visits, stopping in those schools, visiting our hospitals, we hear about the challenges the employers have. They cannot get people to return to work. Why? Because of the expanded unemployment benefits. I am so proud of our governor, Governor Kim Reynolds. She has joined Montana's governor in pushing back on the additional federal dollars for the expanded unemployment benefits. So Iowa is joining that march to get our economy back up and going. We will have people returning to work. We're really excited about this. It's the right thing to do. And so I'm really proud to partner with Senators Marshall and Rubio on their bill, making sure that we are pushing back against the federal government incentive for people to stay home. There is dignity in a job. And right now we are depriving our citizens of that opportunity to work and provide for their family. Thank you.
Thank you. I've been here 4 months. You can't make this stuff up. I thought the federal government was supposed to help the people, but we've got government versus the people. I go to Alabama, and I usually go back and get patted on the back. I'm getting chewed out now because we're up here giving money out. We don't need to be giving money out. We need to go back to work. We need to go back to school. Government versus the people. Last week, I go back and I heard from 3 groups. We had job fairs last week, Coach. We had job fairs in our cities. Nobody showed up. We've got hundreds of jobs. One guy said, I got 200 jobs. I'll give $1,000 bonus to start, $20 an hour, all health care. We can't get anybody to apply because they're sitting at home. Now, some people need a check, but we have done this absolutely the wrong way. You don't write a blank check for everything. You do it the right way. Our unemployment offices have jobs to do. If they're out of job, you go and you apply. But right now, we're just writing checks. I feel sorry for the people in small business because they are going down every day. Every day. And it's embarrassing to me that I'm up here in Washington, D.C., and people are trying to get their lives back together. But we got President Biden last week, gets on national television and says, these checks are not hurting people going back to work. President Biden, go back with me this weekend to Alabama and I'll show you. I'll show you people are not working because of the checks. You need to get your advisors to get out of those offices and go to south or go west and go north and go east and go these places and listen and quit listening to people telling you the wrong things. It's embarrassing that we run a country like this. It's embarrassing. Thank you.
Well, as you can hear, we have a problem in this country, and in our office we call it the Biden bucks. The Biden bucks are keeping people from going back to work. And in Tennessee, we have 255,000 jobs that are available right now. We have 49,000 people that are still getting that plussed up unemployment. And that is 5 jobs for every person. Take your pick. There are plenty of jobs there. Now, I want to thank my colleagues for coming up with a way to address the Biden bucks, to put this into wind down so that we do get people back to work. We get life back to normal. That is what people are wanting to see. It is the right thing to do, to encourage people to return to work, to go to these jobs, to get life back to normal. As I said, 255,000 available jobs in the state of Tennessee. 49,000 people who are still taking unemployment. It's time to end this and get people back to work.
So a week ago, we were on recess, and I think I, of any senator, am the most recent off the street of running a business. I spent most of that week traveling around the state. I'm not going to repeat what's been said here. Coach said he's been here a little over 4 months. I've been here about 2.5 years, and this place will surprise you in terms of some of the stuff that is done that is so counter to what common sense says to do, and just by listening to people on the street. The other thing, pre-COVID, we had the hottest economy that I've ever been a part of, and it's been 37 years. The business that I had to step away from, asked my son, my daughter, what's the biggest challenge we've got? Well, we got about 65 job openings that we can't get anybody to come to, and we pay the highest wage in the lowest unemployment county in the state of Indiana. Something is wrong. The federal government, I think for reasons much broader than addressing COVID, has tried to step in, change the dynamic in this country where you can sell the idea that you live better through government than you do through the productive economy. In places like Indiana, has a balanced budget, has a rainy day fund, does all the things that makes the government work, and now we deal with this bizarro world where this place is trying to create a new paradigm. Here's the solution. Thank goodness you got the bill out there. Every governor, especially Republican governors, my state included, pull the plug so that we don't need to legislate. And blue state governors, if you want to keep people in your state, businesses in your state, they're leaving in certain places, do the same thing.
We got one more crisis. You can't get a yogurt parfait at Starbucks now for 6 days. I don't know what's happening, what shortage it is. I don't know if it's the hackers that did it, but we got to get to the bottom of that as well. All right. Yeah.
I was wondering, so one of the Biden administration's proposals to combat this problem is to make people cut their unemployment benefits if they get a job. He's saying they'll take away their unemployment benefits if they refuse a job. Do you think that's enforceable?
I think it's very difficult, right, to enforce. I mean, it had to be enforced at the state level. Florida's putting in that requirement, has it now, but that's a hard one to enforce. Look, ultimately, this was an issue of timing, and the timing, there was a year ago, you can make a very different argument, but now those jobs are there, and what I'm telling you is that ultimately what I fear most of all is that these businesses that are now operating under capacity because they can't get people to work, they need this time to make up for all that lost revenue of being down for a year, 6 months or 8 months. By the time folks are ready to go back to work as this expires after Labor Day, there may not be a business for them to go back to. I'm worried about a second hit against our economy. I'll let my colleagues add to that.
It's not working now, right? It's obviously not working. Brian, you had one.
Senator Marshall, a number of your colleagues have referenced their governors are foregoing the enhanced benefits. Are you calling on Governor Kelly in Kansas to forego those, or as long as they're available, would you like Kansas to have access to the enhanced benefits?
I'm absolutely calling on her to end the federal unemployment extra benefit. People will still get their $500 a week, but this would end the extra $300. And I would just encourage the.
You want Governor Kelly to do it on her own before the Biden administration acts. That's what I'm trying to say.
I would love for Governor Kelly to make the announcement today. I would suggest following our plan, we're going to cut the federal benefit in half in June, and by July 1st be in with it. But there's two components to this. Number one is it'll help the economy, but I'm really concerned about is people's mental health as well. And Joni kind of talked about this a second ago. The greatest thing we could give a person right now is a job that brings dignity and purpose to their life. If you want to solve the mental health crisis, number one, people need to go to a Royals baseball game, but number two, they need to get back to work as well. So yes, I sure hope that she'll give in here and do the right thing for the state.
Senator Rubio, following up on that, 11 states have already starting to close out their unexpired plus benefits. So isn't now this a state issue where the governors, should you be talking to your governors about ending this program?
Well, and I can address this a little bit as well, but there are so many entities that are operating in multiple states. Not all of them are going to be red states or blue states, but eliminating that federal government portion or stepping it down, it makes it an equal playing field across the board. I would say this should be a state issue, but there are many governors that aren't doing the right thing by those businesses that might be located in different areas. So you may have some people that are returning back to work in one entity, but they're not able to fill the jobs in another state. Let's even that out. Let's make sure that all the states are across the board playing on the same field. I think that's the best.
Different problems and different situations.
And that's exactly why you have state unemployment. We're talking about the federal portion, and those states can deal with those issues, but I would say large in part, some of those are self-created issues. So as long as they have state unemployment, they still have that support network available. But what we're saying is the federal government is going to start stepping down. We will see people going back to work in those states where it makes sense to go back to work. And honest to goodness, I would say most states now can go back to work.
That's it. Thanks, guys.
I guess you're just responding to President Biden saying, there's not enough jobs and there's not enough good-paying jobs. What about making sure that these individuals have, a well-paying job to go back to?
Well, because of the labor shortage, most of these places are paying more than they've ever paid before. The problem is if you're, the cafeteria bakery that I know, they used to pay people $9.50 an hour, now they're paying $13 an hour. But when you're selling pastries at 50 cents and 75 cents, there's a limit to how much you can pay, but they're all paying more. Some are actually giving bonuses to employees that can attract other workers to come because they're so desperate for the labor need. But the labor numbers are there. One of the first things that dies in modern politics is common sense, okay? We had a pandemic, we had an enhanced benefit because, unemployment insurance exists as a short-term bridge between the loss of a job and finding a new one. We had a pandemic. We didn't let people open up. You couldn't find a job even if you wanted to. So people had to live, and probably for an indeterminate period of time, and therefore we had this enhanced benefit. But now we have jobs available. And that's the moment in which you start to tailor it down. And that's the moment in which you do what we should have done, and that is, this thing is right now in the law, ends in late August, early September, right after Labor Day, irrespective of conditions. This should be conditions-based. Once you get to a point where you have a massive number of job openings and not enough people to meet them, it's a pretty good indicator that on a macro level, the economy is in a place where that benefit is no longer needed. And I'm just telling you guys, look, it's not me saying this, okay? All my staff in my office came back to work, and they're all working. They never lost their job. They were working from home. But in this particular case, it's people telling me this. All I'm telling you is what dozens and dozens of small businesses, frankly, every business I interact with is telling me. That's all I'm sharing with you. It's a real problem. All right? Thank you.